Hey guys, this is Team 3, and I'm Marcus Bolton,
And Jimmy Hurst.
and we're going to show you our settings code and the settings unit tests for it. Alright, so the first thing you're going to want to do after you clone the project from the repo is run go build, which will build the project and run the unit tests. This may take a few seconds. Alright, and now we'll take a look at the test report. Now, as you can see, both our settings class, both the load settings functions and the save settings functions have almost 100% coverage each. So we're going to take a look at the settings file, which we decided to do in XML. Alright, so in this settings.xml file, we have multiple tags here, where we have the server ID saved under a server ID tag, and then multiple users with their various information and favorites album are stored under a user tag. And then we have an approved album tag with multiple restriction levels, where each restriction level has its list of approved albums. Alright, so then taking a look at the load settings, the test load settings function, the first thing I do here is I make a new settings object, and then I invoke the load settings method. Now, to verify the information that's been loaded, I first make all of the tools that I will need to parse the XML file. And first here, I assert that the server ID saved in the settings file equals what is parsed from the server ID tag. And then I do a similar thing for the users, where I go through and I loop through all of the users, and I check that all of the users' information stored in the file for every user is equal to what that user's information is according to the relevant tag in the XML file. I do something similar for all of the albums with all of the names and artists of each album, and assert that all of the songs are also there within the album. Then, finally, I do a similar thing for all of the restriction levels, where I go through and I check that there are the correct number of restriction levels as there are in the file, and I check that each restriction level has the correct albums that are stored in the settings file, and ensure that those are also loaded in the file.
Alright, and now I'm here to talk about how we tested the save settings function. So to begin with, I just created a bunch of miscellaneous information to be saved and loaded back later to be tested. And so primarily I start off by making a new settings object, and then I add all the information I just made to just sample users, albums, and songs, of which I then add into the albums, and of course those albums, some of those albums are put into the favorites of the two users that I made. And then to test the approved albums, I just push those two albums with different restriction levels into the list of approved albums. And from there, I have to call the save settings function with all the information that I just made, and then I, of course, have to invoke the load settings to be able to test it. And so to go through, it's pretty simple. I start off by testing to see if the server ID is what I created to start with in the object, and then I just go through each user in the list to see if their individual information equals the information I made at the very beginning of the test. And I just go through, I check the pin, restriction level, image file, admin, and of course the album, of which the equals album also checks each song of the album. And to wrap it up, I simply check to see if those two albums that I pushed into the approved album list is truly there in the list of the settings object that I made earlier. And that concludes our screencast for Team 3. Thanks for watching.